Welcome to episode 4 of No Dice, a podcast series talking about female gambling addiction and stories of recovery across Scotland. I'm your host of the series, Kat Cochrane, and having been in compulsive gambling recovery for 4 years, I'll be sharing my own journey towards the goal of a gamble-free life. As a content warning, this episode does cover themes of addiction and gambling behaviour. In the first 3 episodes, we aim to cover why women gamble is different from why men gamble, the issue of shame and stigma, and the last episode highlighted where women can find support across Scotland at any point in their journey. In this episode, which is the first of 2 parts, we'll be focusing on relationships and how gambling affects them, and this we'll do primarily through sharing the experience of affected others. Often when talking about gambling harms and recovery, the focus is put on the person with the compulsive gambling behaviour and their experience alone, with little attention paid to family members and friends who are affected deeply, and in some cases traumatically, by gambling harm. Joining me as a guest on the episode is Catherine, who will be sharing her journey from living alongside her husband's addiction to gambling through to a place of recovery, growth, and her family flourishing within a gamble-free life. Welcome, Catherine.
Hiya.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode to talk about the journey you and your family have been on in and around your husband's experience of compulsive gambling. Can you take us back to when you first realised that he had a gambling problem?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint the exact time, but I remember looking back and it kind of started off as it was maybe putting money on the horses, going to the bookies. So looking back, it was just kind of, in my eyes, what men do. But then through time, he lost his job and that caused, I wouldn't say money problems, but in his eyes, it was money problems. It was difficult. He wasn't providing what he wanted to be providing. And then just through time, I noticed that he just wasn't coming to bed at night time. He was sitting in the living room all day, all night, maybe secret text messages. I had no idea what was, I thought maybe he was cheating. I had no idea what was going on. But then it all came together because he started to borrow money and things like that. So I would say that it was really when I never saw him, when he wasn't present anymore, when he was not coming to bed, and I started to realise that he's just sitting on these apps all the time, as they escalated when he could go online. And once they found the slots, and then we'd be convinced that I know who the next goal scorer is going to be. That's probably when I started to realise, okay, we've really got an issue here. It was more his behaviour at that point than anything else.
Mm-hmm. And a really difficult thing for partners to accept is the growing realisation that their other half is a serious issue. Was denial something that you experienced even when you realised his gambling habits were becoming a problem?
Looking back, it was. I didn't realise it at the time. I knew there was a problem, but I think I just thought it'll be okay. I've got this and I'll sort it. Mm-hmm. And so I do think there was denial. It wasn't apparent at the time. Probably until now when you ask me, I probably didn't realise there was denial. But yeah, there definitely was some denial there, just not wanting to take on the extent of what was going on, mm-hmm. and maybe protecting him more than actually addressing the issue.
And at that point, was it just between yourselves? Had a conversation kind of came up and it was just between yourselves rather than the wider family knowing at that point?
At that point, yeah. A lot of it was just us. I was so protective, and that was my husband, my boyfriend, husband, because we get married in between it all. But no, a lot of it was protecting him. And I think that's why I kept it quiet. And it wasn't till things got to really, 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 really bad that I realised I got to share what's going on. And that's when the sharing came.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people with a loved one experiencing compulsive gambling go through phases of enabling the problem, not that they want to do that, but it's something that falls into relationships, enabling the problem by lending money or writing off debts just to keep the peace and avoid confrontation, which is natural. Was that something that you went through as a way of protecting yourself and your marriage?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I would give him 10 here, 20 there. And at first I didn't think much of it. It was 10, 20 and he would pay it back if he could. But then through time, I realised I was just doing it to keep the peace. It was to keep everything happy, so the children didn't realise there was anything wrong, just to keep a happy family. So I did enable it in that sense, because I was sending him money and I sort of knew what he was up to. But I do think he was getting money elsewhere as well, but the other people were unaware of what was going on. But yeah, I think I definitely done it to protect the family and keep everybody happy and keep that stability.
I can identify with what you were saying there about he was probably getting money from all sorts of sources that you didn't even know about. Because I know that I was doing that when I was at my heaviest gambling, where I'd be doing that old chestnut of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You know, I'd be bouncing off one of my pals, borrowing money off them 1 week, paying them back, and then borrowing off another one. And then I was like, who did I owe money out to? And then I would do anything, you know, I would come up with like tall stories, short stories, like I need the money for an instalment and a holiday, and if I don't get this instalment, then the holiday's going to go through, do you know what I mean? Like all that kind of carry on. And it all makes sense as a gambler, but then you don't realise the stories that you're telling, because then the lies start to trip up and then everything starts to just all fall apart, and half the lies you tell ain't true, which is another cliche, but it's so true in that space. Was there kind of moments like that where you're thinking, right, he's tripping himself up, you know, a few times or whatever, you know?
And most likely was times maybe he was going fishing, can I get money for fishing? Or money for petrol? Or and I never really thought much of it. If he ever asked, I'd just give him it.
Yeah.
I never really questioned, I didn't really need an excuse. And then I think it got to the point where I knew what it was for, but to keep the peace, I just gave it anyway.
Yeah, that's it. It's like self-protection, isn't it? And thinking, I don't want to push too far because that could cause chaos in your marriage and then the kids here and all that. Now, it's interesting because if you ask a gambling addict to describe their rock bottom, and you ask the same thing of their partner, sometimes the two answers, and quite often the two answers don't quite match up, which shows the different experiences that are being lived out at that time. Are you okay to share perhaps what your own personal rock bottom was on your journey?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one. I think one for us both probably was when we seen our car getting towed away. Just before that, we were on the phone to the finance people, begging them. My dad was going to pay it. We were going to get to keep the car, but they wouldn't allow it. It was too late. And I never knew until we got that letter to say we're coming for the car. And they did. But I think for both of us, that was rock bottom and a light bulb moment. So it was a bit of both. But I think my own personal, which he probably wouldn't know, is, I don't know, it sounds a bit like a movie. One of the moments where I just had enough. I broke down, fell down the wall and just sat and cried in the middle of the hall. Just sat and cried. And I'd probably say that was my own personal rock bottom when everything just hit and I realised that this is all a lot deeper and harder than I thought it was. So I think in a sense it was two rock bottoms, but emotionally it was probably the day that I just kind of collapsed to the floor in bits myself. Nobody knows apart from you. But no, that was probably it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I'm assuming that perhaps you've not spoke about that before in terms of that real emotional crisis that you were having, because I can physically see you sliding down a whole wall. That's a moment. And also the experience you were saying before about your car being taken. I imagine that is something that is happening in the street and you're thinking, right, everything's exposed now, the neighbours can see this is like, and it's a very kind of physical experience of watching something that you've worked hard for or you were paying honestly and earnestly, and then it's kind of taken away. So it's a symbolism of what was going on in time. But thank you for sharing that. Reaching out for support as an affected other of gambling, finding the words to communicate in and around is a massive and challenging step due to the shame that may be experienced around the situation. Can you share what support you had during the toughest times and how that helped you move forward?
I think my main support was my mum and dad. We reached out. He knew that I was talking to them. He was supportive of that. Even when he was still gambling, he knew that I was getting that support from them. I didn't know there was any professional support for me. I didn't think to look out for it. I was always looking for him. I didn't know an affected other was a thing. I just thought I kind of went along with the ride. It was just part of his journey. But I did reach out to a mindset coach called Lee, and she helped to change my life. she helped me set boundaries, learn how to say no, and not allow the behaviour that we were both doing, me allowing him to have the money, him asking and getting told yes, but allowed me to start saying no. And I think that support helped him because he wasn't getting the money as easy anymore because I wasn't allowing it anymore.
That barrier had came down for him and that was the best thing, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, once the boundaries were set, that was it. I was journaling, I was doing my wins, I was doing everything to make sure that I stuck to it. So I do think he was a good support as well once he realised he had the gambling addiction. Yeah, I heard a number of times, I'll stop. And I just looked at him, whatever. But then one day he says, do you know, I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to show you. And he did. And it was after the card got towed away. It kind of flicked something in him. I thought I could lose my house next and my family, or I show that I can do it. And he did. So I think support would have been each other, family, and my mindset coach.
That's definitely great, yeah. So can I ask who the mindset coach was? So that wasn't through a gambling support from,
No, she was through, I used to work with her, and then she went through her own trauma and rebuilt herself through having her own mindset coach. And I reached out to her. I knew she had done training. She's just sort of my cheerleader, coming alongside me.
The timing was good by the sounds of it. She came into your life, or you'd already known her, but like that part of shared experience you could, like being able to chat about it and communicate. That's great, because one of the things that we were talking earlier about when I had to come out to my partner, and I really didn't think about what my family had been going through, or it was really, really later on in my recovery, and I have a lot of regrets around that, because it's almost as if, okay, this is just my journey. This isn't anyone else's journey. They're just happy to hear me saying I'm no gambling anymore, but I'd already left a bit of a trail of, disaster and mistrust and broken promises. And it's something, and I'm not with my partner anymore, but I do have regrets about not realising what she needed in the moments even when I come clean and I went to my first GA meeting and when I was like seeking support, I just didn't take her along for the ride. And I think that's what, when people that start recovery, they really have to take their friends and their family, and especially their closest loved ones, with them, because the journey isn't going to be as strong unless there's, even if it's that one person, even if you're not in a relationship, you're not married, it could be like your best pal, or it could be like a colleague that you're really close with, if you're able to take somebody on that journey. And I think that's something that I regret. That's why I feel so passionate about affected others getting their voice, because I feel like I didn't give my friends and family and, like I say, my ex-partner a voice in my journey, because I was just so cloth-eared to what they needed. It took me about 2 years to realise that, but I've realised it now, but in many ways it's too late, But I've been able to rebuild friendships and trust and where I can and whatever, Now, alongside your husband's recovery, you've also found personal growth, and you're currently studying psychology at university. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I'm interested to know how your experience around supporting your husband through addiction led you towards choosing psychology as a subject.
Yeah, well, I think I had always planned on doing psychology, but I was never brave enough to go to uni. I didn't think I was smart enough, clever enough. I had done college, I'd done counselling and achieved certificates through that. But it was, again, after doing my mindset, changed my mindset, doing my mindfulness, supporting him. I thought, I can go to uni. I am smart enough. And I think that's where the journey came into choosing the subject. I always wanted to do it, but the journey gave me that push to just go for it and think, what's the worst I can do? Say no. But no, now I'm going into year 4 and focusing on using my story to pass my dissertation.
Can you share what your dissertation is about? Is it too early to say? Or?
Going to be either about affected others or the gender bias surrounding gambling-related harms and how females aren't recognised as much as males, possibly. I might be right, might be wrong, but I'll find out.
It's a good thick subject, absolutely, and I think it'll be a really good journey for you when you do your research for that, because that's something that we've really covered in the previous episodes. Like the No Dice episode number 1 was why women gamble is different from why men gamble, and I just had that as a very first, like when I first had the idea for the podcast, I went, that's got to be the first episode, because it lays the ground for everything around the female experience. And then being able to do that episode and open that up has kind of led the way to all the other topics and all the other issues within female gambling. So it's a really good, interesting subject and not talked about enough in the gambling sphere, because we know that whether it comes to the advertising, that's always been about men, but now it's so much more focused on, aimed at women. And then through that, women have got more issues with gambling, and now we've seen more support for women. But at the same time, the industry, the gambling industry, still has the power, you know, and we need to just work a little bit to raise awareness. So whether it's like with this podcast or whether it's with your dissertation and people reading it, we're all pushing in the same direction to raise that awareness. So really, really cool that you've, you know, that's the topic and that's the subject of it, the gender lens. Can I just ask how the course is going? Because, you know, is it like you're enjoying it mostly?
Oh, I'm loving it. So we're doing well so far. So one more year.
One more year, yeah.
I just want a pass. Just a pass will do.
It's a real undertaking. You know, I mean, I did journalism for 2 years and I was like, when is this ever going to end? So 4 years is a real commitment, especially when you have kids, especially when you have life happening, you know. It's like a really good...
I think it's something for me. Something that takes me away from being a wife and a mum.
Yeah.
It's me. That's my thing. Hopefully it'll go well. And then I'll maybe go on to do my master's in addiction. We'll see.
Brilliant. I mean, like you're 4 years in, you know, it's like it's going to happen. It's absolutely brilliant. So while life has its ups and downs and challenges, how are things for you as a family? Now you've came through the experience of supporting your husband out of gambling addiction and into a successful recovery and gamble-free life.
I'd say we're stronger than ever. And I think a lot of people will be like, oh, okay, that's what they say. But no, we really are. We've come through it. We work together. If he ever has any urges, he'll tell me. And he didn't have any external support in recovery. We'd done it together, just me and him. And I think that helped us to grow closer. We were both open and honest. And he's got a job where he's a supervisor. I'm at uni and doing my thing. And he's so supportive in me speaking out about being an affected other, that I think that really helps the strength as well. And then another upside is we're just back from our first holiday since it all happened.
Amazing, yeah. Where did you go?
Just down to England, a wee haven down in Scarborough.
They can be great wee holidays, amazing. So that the whole family?
Yeah, all of us went, and that's the first, I'd say about 4 or 5 years, the first time we've been able to afford to go away. So that was a massive achievement. That was a massive moment to just go and not worry about money and not worry about anything. So it was kind of just another goal reached that we've done it.
It's a beautiful symbolism, the holiday thing. Yeah,
that's kind of what it was. Like we've done it and we've done it together. And that was a good moment.
Yeah.
But we're definitely stronger than ever. I would like to renew the vows because we get married in 2019, but we were going through a tough time. So I think I'm trying to get him on that side of, now that we're stronger and better and truthful, let's go and do that. But we'll see.
It's really interesting because I meant to actually pick up this earlier. Now, so your husband didn't go to GA or didn't get any support from GamCare or the National Helpline or anything, yeah? That's like a total testament to you guys just working together as your own team.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that are in recovery, they had to find one way or another. You know, like for me, I went to GA and for 8 months it didn't work out. So therefore I went to rehab, and then I loved rehab. But then after a while, I slipped, tripped and fell, and I had to do another kind, you know. So I went through all these different gamuts of support until, you know, and it all helped in a way, but I had to have all the different kinds. But the fact that you've been able to come through it, he's not had to get that external support is a true reflection of you both as a couple and as a family and as a team, because that is quite unusual. Because I speak to a lot of people who have, and I say, right, what is the thing that's been your biggest support factor, whether it's affected other or whether it's a person that's had gambling addiction themselves, and they're like, yeah, similar, I tried this but that didn't work, and then I bounced from this to that to the other, and then I found something, or none of them worked and I'm still struggling. But the fact that it's just been the love and the support and the communication within the family unit, I think that is amazing. And actually, I didn't realise that was the case. I assumed that your husband had the GA experience or some kind of support. Yeah. So that is like fantastic. That's so cool.
No, he said absolutely nothing. Just just me.
Just you, yeah.
Me and him, and we've worked through it all together, the bills, the debts, absolutely everything. We're now debt-free. We're thriving. We couldn't be any better.
Couldn't be any better. Yeah. That's so good to hear. Which is a really nice place to end in terms of just how fantastic it is to hear not only your husband's journey of beating his gambling addiction, but your experience of growth foremost, as that's what this episode is always aimed to highlight. Is there any advice that you'd like to share with people who are listening that are perhaps experiencing what you did a few years ago?
Yeah, just talk. There is help. You're important. It's not just about that individual who's affected. It's a wider unit. It's a family. It's yourself. I think I just always say, you matter. You're important. And there is help out there. And that's always my main go-to. Just speak, talk, share.
Brilliant. You matter. That is going to be the tagline for this episode. I love that. I love that 100%. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me in this episode. It's been fantastic to hear about your journey, and there's a few things that I didn't want to ask too much because it's just been so surprising to hear some of the things, and hopefully that's came through and it's really reflected in the episode. So thank you so much, Catherine. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
On the next episode, we'll be talking to Lindsay, who will be sharing her story of growing up in the shadow of her father's gambling addiction as a child and how it shaped her life in adulthood, which I can promise will be another episode of hope, strength and resilience. So thank you so much for listening, and catch you next time in No Dice, a 12-episode series discussing female gambling addiction and women's recovery journeys across Scotland.